Rucker, who's going to be facilitating this afternoon session. I'm sure many of you all have had the pleasure of meeting Erica when she was on your side of the table, and now she is with TPI, and so I will put it into her hot hands.
All right, so I'm gonna, can y'all hear me? Everybody hear me? Cool. We're trying the lapel mic. All right, so, like she said, I'm Erica Rucker. I'm from TPI. Newly back from maternity leave. Yeah. And he is here today, so that's been fun. So, everybody knows TPI, you know, we do the external evaluation piece, the final reports that were due September 30th, the evaluation plans that are due in December, and then the ongoing things that we do with your evaluators. So first, I want to make it clear. So this is called What You Need to Know About External Evaluators from the Experts. If you have any questions about the external evaluation process, call me. Call Linda Williams, call Linda Dean, call TPI, period. There are a lot of things that your evaluator is supposed to be doing for you that I see people doing for themselves and not using their evaluation, even the report that they get, in the correct manner. Make sure that y'all use this. This is a tool for you. These are people that are here to work with you. They're not here to catch you doing anything wrong. They are here to support your program and make your program better. Use them for that. So that's my little preface that I wanted to say, so we'll go on to the next one. All right, so we're just gonna go over some topics that we notice are just an ongoing thing that needs to be reiterated, and I've put different evaluators' names next to those topics, but the other evaluators can feel free to chime in also. So the first one is open communication with the external evaluator. Dr. Phil Hammond. So I should introduce all my people. So this is Dr. Dr. Calvin Briggs, Dr. Phil Hammonds, okay. Dr. Susan Hargett, and Dr. Sarah Odoms. And now we'll start with Dr. Phil Hammonds.
Okay. Thank you, and it's good to see all of you and so many colleagues and friends here today. I remember the first year I was an external evaluator after retiring from public education. And one of the first schools I visited to make an observation, the site supervisor there was brand new. And he didn't know what to expect, and we introduced ourselves, and he looked at me and said, "May I ask an honest question?" I said, "Absolutely." He said, "This isn't one of those got you kind of visits, is it?" And we had a long discussion that our role is not, and Erica alluded to it, it's not to find you doing something wrong. I think I speak for my colleagues here and all the other external evaluators. We really want to be viewed as a colleague, as a member of your team, because we all have the end result in mind, the same goal, and that is to provide the best services for the children we serve. That may be one of them trying to reach us now to ask you a question. We have the same goals in mind. So I see us wearing two hats, really. One, we have a defined specific role. You have set, and I know part of the questions will include this, you've set some measurable objectives to go along with your goals. We have to evaluate what progress we've made toward reaching those goals. And that brings us to an impartial, unbiased, just transparent, candid view of did you meet your goals, and let's look at your objectives. So our role is pretty rigid in that regard. But also, and I tell this to the schools that I work with, we also want to be a cheerleader for you. And the many successes that you have, we want to be sure those are not overlooked when we start assembling your final report, that let's celebrate the successes. It may be something that you're overlooking, you think, well, that really wasn't that big a deal. If it's something that is really needs a spotlight shown on it about some event, some occasion, some aspect of a summer program, we want to be sure that we're out there leading the cheering section that, hey, here's some good things going on. So please do view us, and I trust you do, and my colleagues here are wonderful at what they do. View us as a part of your team. We have a defined role, but we all are wanting the same thing, and that is what's the best that we can provide for our students. So external evaluator, we wear a rigid hat in terms of looking at your data, assessing your data, determining with you, do we meet our goals or not? How can we improve? How can we keep going in that northeasterly direction where we're continually improving? But also, let us help celebrate your successes with you.
Good afternoon. How's everyone doing? You looking good, looking healthy? COVID-free, I hope. Okay. Well, just to add on to some of the comments Dr. Hammond made, you know, communication is definitely key in this entire process, and evaluators are not out to get you. In fact, the more you communicate with your evaluator, you'll see that even your results on the ground at your site will improve, because it's our job to see things that you probably don't see. And as a 22-year veteran educator, teaching in elementary, middle, high school, and college, we're constantly doing the work. It's hard for us to see in our peripheral what's going on because we're engaged in the work. And most of y'all, just from talking with you and knowing the type of work that you do, you probably got PTSD anyway. And so it's hard for you to see, because sometimes you need a day off just to process what's going on. So really, it's an extra set of eyes that's looking at information and looking at data and reports to help you kind of figure out how to do your job better. And the thing about data is, it's necessary. I know it's cumbersome. I know it's hard. You've been working with children all day, and now you got to go enter these reports. But the reports are to help us make good decisions, so you have to be able and willing and even get an extra set of hands. The person that's doing all the teaching, the hands-on with the children, probably shouldn't be the person doing the reports because you don't have the energy. So you have to think about this in a very strategic way in terms of how you communicate with your evaluator, who's entering the data, and when you're entering the data. So those are my comments.
I have worked with 21st Century since the year 2000. I wrote some of the very first federal grants from DC, and 21st Century has grown. It was very different when we first started. We have learned, and education has changed. So you are doing a wonderful job out there. You are doing much better than we ever did back then, or even 5 years ago. So many things have been coordinated, and Truman Pierce and the State Department is helping you be able to do your job better every day. And you just need to appreciate what's going on with 21st Century, and that the GEPRA measures are going to be fine. I wrote around $40 million worth of grants for Franklin County Schools, and we dealt with DC, and we did GEPRA measures and prevention grants and different things. So GEPRA measures, it's not something to be afraid of, it's something to learn about, and I think that it will help your programs. We always tell the sites when we go out that we're doing formative evaluation. And that means that we're helping you find where your deficits are so that you can improve them during the year. Because we would be not very good if we let you sit there all year in something that we knew about that you needed to be working on. So we tell them that we do formative evaluation until the end. Then it becomes summative. We cannot change what you didn't do, and there has to be evidence. And as we got data this year, and this year was a terrible year for data. We had like one site that had 4 different easy report site coordinators during the year. We had, I think, 4 site coordinators that are program directors that were out with COVID, some of them more than once. And then when we finally got data, then we got sick and had to have some different things. So it was a rough year, but we learned from it. We learned how to do things better. We learned how to ask for things differently. And that's what it's about. So I congratulate you for living through the pandemic and for State Department and Trim and Pierce for making things better. And I think we all learned. So glad to be here today to talk to you.
I'll just say one quick thing. Never allow titles to alienate you from your people who have your back. Just don't let that happen.
That was a great way to wrap that up. Okay. So our next one is writing SMART objectives. And I left that one open for everybody, so I'm going to start with Dr. Odom since she got the last say this time.
So one of the things that I like to say about SMART objectives, when you think of, in terms of your next grant, I see objectives all over the place. I do. And I know why you're doing it, because you're thinking, whoever's reading this, we want to impress them because we want the money, right? I know. But here's the thing. With objectives, make sure that you keep them within the confines of what you can control. When you start writing objectives out there that you really have no control over, don't be surprised when the data doesn't give you what you want to see at the end of the year. So I encourage you, yes, they should be smart. They should be specific and measurable and all of that. But here's the thing. Can you control it? Can your program control it? If you can't control the objective, it's not your objective. So think about that as you move forward.
I agree so much with Sarah. So many of the objectives that we saw were not attainable, especially during the pandemic. And so make sure, think about what could happen to make me not attain this objective, and try to write yourself something in there like that keeps you from not reaching the objective. And like Sarah said, we all want to reach the moon because we want the money, and we know that's what's going to get it, we think. But sometimes we see sites that are not as good, that reach all their objectives, and then we see a site that's excellent that does not reach their objectives because they didn't write it attainable.
Wasn't it Stephen Covey that reminded us begin with the end in mind? That again, we want to be 11-0 in our season, but we have to be realistic and look at what our performance was last year, what the data show us. Was our team 4-6? Well, we want to win all our games, but what's a sign of improvement? And taking those steps, always looking at continuous progress. That's what our programs, that's what you're about, your schools, is where are we and how do we keep moving in the right direction to, again, reach a goal. So knowing what those goals are, and as the two colleagues said, being realistic about it. You know, perfect is the enemy of good, and we forget that sometimes, that good is not a bad thing, that how we make incremental steps of just continuously improving and being very smart about how we write those objectives.
Ditto, 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 and ditto. I think that when you're writing your objectives, you have to ask yourself probably two simple questions. Do I have a relationship with the people I need to get this data from? And does the data actually exist? I'll give you an example. Improve student behavior. We're going to improve student behavior by 90% this year. 90%. And we're going to impact over 80% of the students that actually attend 30 days or more. Sounds good, right? What's the two questions you need to ask? Who has the data? If you're a CBO, where do you go get the data from? Who's recording the data? How do you define behavior? Are you happy one day? Are you sad? How do you measure happy and sad? So the questions keep rolling in. How do you measure a change in behavior? And who do you get the data from? It sounds very simple, but looking at and trying to measure this is very difficult. So if you're looking at truancy reports or you're looking at behavior reports submitted by teachers, well, you have to have a relationship with your teachers. Who are the teachers that are teaching my students? So there is a question on the survey that says, has the student behavior increased for teachers and for students? That's a great start. But you can't say 80% are going to do this, that, and the other, and you don't have any data. So I would encourage you, and I don't know if this is even allowable, but reach out to some professionals who have written grants and let them take just a quick glance at your objectives. And even those percentages, the use of percentages, I think, is overused. You don't have to put 90%. It doesn't have to be 110. Do something manageable. 20% of my students will be impacted. And then the next year, if you meet that goal, say, well, I met this goal last year, or better yet, if you didn't meet the goal, a lot of folks get afraid, well, I didn't meet that measurable outcome. I'm a bad site, I'm a bad person. No, all data is good data. The question you should be asking yourself is, why did not meet the goal? Was there something in the activity, or was there a deficit? Was it COVID? What impacted my program that created a barrier to me achieving this goal? So all data is good. It's about how you use it.
So I have 3 points that I'm going to add to this because I want to give you a really good way to find this, to create these goals and objectives, which I used. First, other states' grants are out there. Google them. They have objectives and their whole grants out there online. Just look for them. That's one. Number 2, ask a special ed teacher to help you write your goals and objectives. They are used to writing things very specifically, so they know how to put those in a good way. 3, look at your school's continuous improvement plan. Most of the times their goals and objectives align with 21st Century's goals and objectives, and you can get a good gauge on the percentage that you should be asking for. I used to do the 70 or 80% increase in this. Then I realized this is too hard to achieve. And so then I looked at the continuous improvement, and the continuous improvement plan for the school said that they were going to increase 10%. Well, why am I shooting for the moon and the school is only shooting for 10%? So make sure that you look at those 3 things to try to figure out about measurable objectives. Pre and post assessments, Dr. O.
So Dr. Phil and Dr. Briggs have already talked about this. One of the things that I see is that we are looking for data out there that either doesn't exist, we can't get our hands on, or it really doesn't measure what we're doing in our program. So if you go back to your evaluation courses that you took in college, you know that a real scientific study deals with a pre-post test. Remember that model, everybody? Did anybody miss that? I just believe we would do much better at showing growth in our own programs if we would spend more time utilizing assessments that we know our teachers have dealt with through our program, our after school. Because a lot of times we're leaning on and we're dependent upon data that we don't even have access to yet. Okay, so I think I encourage you, seek ways that you can put assessment in your objectives that you can handle, that you have control of, that you don't have to wait for. Do we not look at the state assessment? No. Yes, we look at that. But there needs to be some measurements in there for you that you have your hands on, that you control within your CBOs, for example, have a hard time. They would have data if they had pre-post assessments. Okay, schools have a hard time sometimes getting state assessment data in by the time we need it to get our evaluations done. If they had pre-post assessments as part of those evaluation processes, it would be there. We would have it. You would look great. So I encourage you, think about pre-post assessments, and I'm sure some of the others want to add to that.
Something that we found looking at lots of different things was that some people would say, along with testing, that they were going to look at the grades. And some sites said that they were going to compare the first 9 weeks to the last 9 weeks. Well, what happens in schools? During the first 9 weeks, you're teaching, they're really remediating. They're going over things that kids already know. So kids typically have higher grades during that first 9 weeks. And then what happens during the last 9 weeks? They're going on field trips, they're playing Little League baseball, they're doing all these things that are interfering with them necessarily, and then the teacher says, oh, but I need to give some grades, and so then they test them, and the kids as a whole do not do as well the last 9 weeks. So then that puts them not meeting the goal. The same thing with attendance. If you're saying you're going to compare the first 9 weeks of attendance to the last 9 weeks, as far as in your after-school program, same thing happens. How many of you in the spring, when kids get involved with other things, or they just get tired of going, and we know that kids often tell parents what they're going to do, and then that last 9 weeks, they don't come to after school. Well, your attendance goes down. So be very, very cautious about using the first 9 weeks compared to the last 9 weeks.
So what would you suggest?
Anything but that. And we'll go into that more later.
So one of the things that I like to, and I'm sorry, guys, I'll hurry. One of the things that I like to talk about is, you know, we want to measure actual things that we're doing. So how many times are you giving a leadership course during the week that focuses on good citizenship, showing up on time, being there for work? How many times are you providing students with that structure that they need? Sometimes we look at, oh, let's just look at absences, or, oh, let's just look at behavior. There are many other things that you are doing that you can measure to show that you are implementing a good program. Think outside the box of absences and discipline referrals. There are other things you can add to strengthen your report. So I encourage you to do that. Also, you know, you cannot control whether a mama will bring a kid to school or not. That is out of your control. But what you can do is encourage the kid through incentives. How many times do you give incentives for 5-day-a-week participation in your program? Think of things you can do that will have that child saying, Mama, I want to go. I want to be there. So I just encourage you to think, not that we do away with those measurable objectives of attendance and discipline, but that we add strength to our reports by adding other objectives that we can show we are doing a good job.
And I want to answer that. You could do things like growth during the year with the entire grades during the year, not just tied from first 9 weeks to last 9 weeks, or you can do something about how many days they attended during the year. And then I really felt for you this year because we had one site that wrote that something like 85% of the 30-day kids would attend 170 days or more at the site. Their school was only in session because of the pandemic and COVID and different things for 111 days. It was virtually impossible for them to meet 170 days.
I think there's always been a major issue with some of the goals and objectives that we set in grants and proposals. You know, a lot of times when we write these objectives, we think it's etched in stone and it can't be changed. Why would we have a formative evaluation process if we didn't want to change? The whole idea of what we're doing is about change. Nothing is going to go the way you wrote it in that proposal. We did not see COVID coming. We don't know what's going on in a child's home or after school once they leave your program, before they come to your program. You don't have control of these things. We expect things to go wrong or not as planned. So you have to, the evaluation process is supposed to leave room for things to change. And so with COVID, one of the things we did with our reports were we made sure we include a lot of language that tried to explain what the environment was like during 2019 to 2020 and from 2020 to 2021. Because if you pulled these reports, you didn't include that language. You pulled these reports, let's say 5, 10 years from now and read it. It was like, oh, they did horrible. Look at the attendance, look at the grades, this is horrible. And you didn't have the context. So you have to put everything in context and explain, well, we're in the middle of COVID. The Trump administration, and was continued by the Biden administration in terms of social distancing policies. School was truncated one year, right? So we didn't have a standardized test from the State Department. Students didn't have to take a stand. So there's all these mitigating circumstances going on that may not appear in the report. But you need to include in a report so that people have context. And then if you see a need to change, when we saw COVID coming, I was telling my sites, hey, we may need to modify those measurable outcomes because we ain't gonna meet them. So what's the ability for you to go in and change? Well, with your evaluation plan coming up, right? What do we do in the evaluation plan? We set our goals for that year. So in the evaluation plan, you may want to look at your evaluation plan from last year and say to yourself, did we meet these goals? Do we need to change? And find out what the process to modify those measurable outcomes or those goals are so that it fits into the context of what you're currently experiencing with your students, your sites, and your schools, okay? And one of the things I wanted to kind of reinforce is that we gotta have a growth mindset versus the deficit mindset. We know we're dealing with COVID. We know we don't have all the resources and all the things we need, but I've seen so many sites be so innovative. They use Zoom like they were doing this for years, right? They took something difficult where some sites shut down and they became more innovative. They grew, they learned how to use Zoom, they learned how to use Flipgrid, they learned how to use all these online resources. So it really was an opportunity for a lot of sites and a lot of directors and a lot of people to grow. So they took a negative situation and benefited, and it grew in the midst of it. So that's why we encourage all our sites to do and all of you to do. Don't be afraid to go to your evaluator and say, I don't think this evaluation plan is gonna fit what we're trying to do this year. And you got till December, right? So this is the time you need to talk to us about, hey, let's change this.
So this is a good time to say, the quicker you get your reports from Easy Report, which means your data into Easy Report, and then your reports from Easy Report to your evaluators, the quicker y'all can have these discussions about the reports, the quicker they can actually finish the reports. If you didn't give them their data until September 15th, and it was due September 30th, what do you expect for the report to look like? And I will always say, I always reviewed my final reports, my evaluation plans, and everything before I submitted. Dr. Breeze is my evaluator. He'll tell you, it's a running joke between me and him. I read Mark his final
Red
report.
lines
We do-
everywhere.
If he sent it to me in a PDF, I
Circles.
sent it back and said, send it to me in a Word document, I'm gonna do track changes. You
Yeah.
need to be looking over it, not to make corrections as far as his recommendations, but corrections as far as your data. Is your data correct? Are there typos in it? If you have more than one site, are you talking about the same school throughout the whole thing? This is a reflection of your program, so you need to make sure that it looks correct before you submit it to us. But you also need to have it in time, which means you need to give them the reports in time to have that review session. You don't want to be in the car on the way somewhere looking over your reports in one day, because it's not a happy, peaceful thing.
But one quick question. By a show of hands, how many of you had an opportunity to look at your report this year? Or actually do what Erica just suggested, have an opportunity to make revisions and changes to the report? Okay, very good.
And then also know that getting your final report was a key to completing your continuation grant. A lot of the things that they put in your report are the reports that you pulled for your final report went right into your continuation grant. None of this, we're not trying to make you recreate the wheel. TPI, we working right with the State Department for these things to be put in there. If objectives need to be changed, they have to be changed for your continuation grant. There's a section that says updates. That's where you're gonna put, hey, we realized this was a little bit too extra, or it was a year of COVID, we didn't meet this standard. So you need to be thinking about those things. They work hand in hand. So if you have one, you can be working with the other. And you can also make sure that you're distributing this to your higher ups, your admin people within your school system. They need a copy of your final report so that they know what good things you're doing in your program. If you don't toot your own horn, no one will know. So our next one is STEM burnout. With 21st century, we have a certain amount of times we're supposed to do STEM, it's supposed to be 3 times a week. And a lot of times you feel overwhelmed with trying to create new STEM activities. So Dr. Briggs is a STEM person, so he's gonna talk about STEM burnout.
So, of course, being a mathematics teacher and professor, everything was math. And so math isn't necessarily figuring out 2 + 2. Math is really a mindset, and we're going back to that word mindset. It's the way you think. It's like a football player. Performance is gonna come based on the way you think, and that performance also comes from repetition. You can't do homework the night before and expect to be good at something or understand it and have that kind of mindset. So really math in any STEM area is about repetition and being an exposure and experience. That's why STEM is so important in terms of providing exponential or learning for students, hands-on learning for students to touch and feel some of the things that we produce when it comes to learning science and math. Because sitting in a math and science class, you're learning formulas, you're learning processes, you're learning experimental methods, but you're not applying it. So with STEM, you're supposed to be applying. Now, what I usually see is a lot of application without explanation. And so one of the things I would encourage us to do is making sure you don't need a lot of fancy robots. You don't need rockets that shoot to the moon. You don't need, dead frogs and pigs on your site. But what you do need to do is make sure you're connecting what they're learning in their science classes and what they're learning in their math classes back to these projects. And that's one of the biggest holes that I see, the connection. Because you want the student to connect what they're, oh my God, this relates back to solving equations and what I was doing with chemistry. We were trying to balance out chemistry formulas. So, and this is related back to my math class. So it's more integrative. So if we're not making these connections while our students are actually going through these projects, then we're missing the mark. We're really missing the mark. It's just another fancy or expensive activity that we chose to implement on our site. So, and again, you don't need the fancy robots. You could build rockets out of cardboard, soda bottles, baking soda. Walmart has an entire site full of activities under $10. STEM activities under $10 that you can purchase at Walmart. You don't have to, I know we got some great vendors here. You don't need to spend $1 million. And I guarantee they will have more fun with these activities than they would with all the fancy stuff. So I would encourage you, make sure you're making the connections. But then we're going back to relationship with school day teachers. So if you're a CBO, do you have some teachers coming or experienced educators coming on your site to help provide some professional development education to make those kind of connections? I will share with Erica some of the websites that I think are important that will help you in terms of resources. One site you may not be familiar with yet is the Alabama STEM Council site. Raise your hand if you heard about the Alabama STEM Council. Only a couple of people. So the Alabama STEM Council just spent about $30,000 on working with APTV. APTV just did their first show, I think it was 2 weeks ago, STEM Explorers. Basically, two young kids, I call them young kids, they're not young adults, young kids, and they're doing math experiments with Southern Research's STEM director. And they're just exploring and talking and hanging out and having fun, but it's a TV show. And ABT TV is going to run this for the next year. So I would encourage you to use that as a resource. Then you have Alabama AMSTEC has a resource page. The Southern Center has a page. There are tons of websites with resources that I guarantee you have never seen. But I will share these resources with Erica, and she'll be able to share them with the rest of you.
Dr. Riggs makes a wonderful point that, you know, we can compartmentalize our after-school program over here and our regular school day program here, but that connectivity and that communication between the regular school day teachers and the after-school staff of what were some things you did in the STEM arena today? How can those carry over into what we're practicing? How can we find that collaboration or that connectivity so it's not a divide and that we're not recreating something or trying to recreate something that has already been presented? How can we do it in perhaps a different way? And I am amazed, the schools that I visit, of the creativity that I see of how you come about doing your STEM projects, or how you do reach out to, as Dr. Briggs says, the expert or someone well-versed in the STEM arena. So it goes back maybe to that first question, Erica, that came up, or the first talking point about communication, about how you stay in touch, and the absolute necessity for a successful program of staying in touch with your colleagues during the regular school day, carrying over into what you're doing, your technical advisors, Truman Pierce Institute. Anytime I've called with a question, the phone is answered and they get me my question is answered from my role as an external evaluator. So sometimes we just box ourselves in and we think, well, I'm not going to rock the boat or ask somebody for help or direction or clarification. And that's when we really we go backward. So that collaboration of continually moving forward, of reaching out with STEM help, of reaching out for that collaboration, that it's not compartmentalized over here in one way during the regular day and over here in the after-school program. There really can be a bridge with all these incredible resources that are out there but are growing tremendously.
So the next one we're going to talk about is a hot topic, the importance of the Literacy Act. And Dr. Susan Hargett is going to talk about that.
I have been polling people for a few days about what's happening to you with the literacy grant. How many of you raise your hands if it is impacting your program negatively? Nobody's going to say it.
Y'all ain't gonna-
Don't be
Everybody's
shy.
been telling me all week that it's killing their program.
Your staff for summer camp,
Yeah.
The children,
number of
right,
children.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Numbers went down.
Some things that people are sharing with me, they set up their summer program, and all of a sudden, the literacy program robbed them of all their employees. They cannot get employees in the afternoon because literacy teachers can make $50 an hour and do no paperwork, whereas they're paying $20 or $25 an hour for after school. The kids, they cannot reach their enrollment because kids are being robbed from them to put in the literacy program. Now, mostly where they're successful, the Literacy Act working with after-school programs is where there's not many kids that need to go into the literacy camp or whatever. I talked to one school, and they only had 6, so that was no problem for them. Then you talk to another school, and the majority of their kids need to be somewhere working, especially because they're EL kids. So what I'm hearing over and over is that superintendents are saying they may not apply for 21st century because they now are going to be able to get ESSER funds to do after-school programs and summer programs. So it's going to break my heart that this is going to rob 21st century of the grants that we've had, you know, the sites that we've had. I've also heard tales about how different people are doing their Literacy Act. I heard one school system was doing the 70 hours in 2 weeks, 35 hours each week. I've heard some are staggering it during the weeks. There's all kinds of different scenarios. I've talked to some legislators about what it's doing to 21st century, and that I'm afraid that it's going to make a lot of superintendents not apply. Then it might impact our funding from nationals. But I want us to be aware of what it's doing to 21st century. And I know that state's aware, and Truman Pierce, what's happening. So there's going to be several programs that did not make their attendance this year because of the Literacy Act. There should be some way that those funds, and I know we've got guidance on it, and there's different ways in different systems. Some systems are able to braid them and be able to coordinate the kids and different things, like run their literacy program in the morning, and then the kids be able to come in the afternoon to 21st century, and then keep your regular kids in the morning. I don't think all systems know how to do that, so I would like to see more guidance from the state as far as that's concerned about how we can do those things and make our 21st centuries really strong. And my biggest fear is, and I don't want to be, well, I'm just going to say it. I'm the person that always says it the way it is. I'm afraid that we're going to make some kids just hate reading before it's over with. Because if you know, there's the drill and kill, and I've talked a lot with the state arts people and the Arts Council. You know, the ESSER money can be used for the arts, and a lot of the COVID money that came down can be used for the arts. And how many kids do you have that learn in multiple ways? You know, multiple intelligences. They may not learn looking at the book, but they can learn lots of things through other ways. So just want everybody to think a little bit differently on that. And some of you may have some more input on what you think it's doing as far as your grantees are concerned.
Yeah, we're running low on time, so we're gonna move ahead.
Okay.
Complementing the school day, that's gonna be Dr. Hargett too. Or if anybody has anything they wanna chime in. Dr. Odom, you look like
Okay. Conflicting, no?
complimenting the school day.
Oh. Well, all I can say on that is that you just need to work with your school day. Yeah, I think that's hers.
I think I'm the one who wrote that on there. One of the things that I want to say is please don't make after school an extension of school where they go into a classroom and they continue doing the same types of things that they just left. Please give them a time to, and I printed out some things here that I looked at in other states. Children need time to de-stress. I mean, think about it. How many of us want to work an 8-hour day and then go work 2 more hours in the same way? No, we want a break. So think about fun activities that you can engage your students in immediately following the regular school day. Give them a time. Now, yes, we know we need literacy. We know we need mathematics and science structure. But at the same time, these children need time to blow off some steam. So I encourage you to make sure that your after school is vibrant. And I have seen some excellent examples, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you what they are specifically this afternoon because I don't want to call anybody out. But I have some wonderful sites doing great things where students get to expel some of that energy and go into another time of learning and fun activities. So please do not have it that's so structured that they feel like they should feel like they have left school and gone to after school. There should be a distinction. And that's all I had to say about that.
Seeing an excited child come to an after-school program is the greatest reward perhaps that we can have. I can't wait to get there because there are some creative things I'm going to be able to do. I'm going to be able to run around on the playground a little while. I'm going to learn some things in a fun fashion. So perhaps creativity, and you all are very creative colleagues, creativity of how do we make this a program that if my child or grandchild wanted to attend, would I be thinking, wow, what a great opportunity. They're going to learn, they're going to have fun, it's going to be a safe environment, it's just going to be a win-win situation for everybody. So how do we package that? How do we put that all together where, again, I'm excited as a child to be there. I'm excited as a parent or a grandparent to send my child or grandchild there. How do we get those creative juices. And again, I am overwhelmed oftentimes when I go out and visit schools of seeing the creativity in place of making those kinds of activities fun, learning-based as well. I'm learning while I may not even realize it, but how do we put that creative factor in there that it's just not a cookie-cutter approach, it's not go to that classroom setting and continue what we did during the regular day, but what would I want it to be like if I were going to be a student there? How do we package that?
Well, you know, during the course of the school day, teachers are a slave to the standards, right? You got to teach the standards, your objectives that you put on that board, right? So you're limited. You may have 45 minutes to get everything completed within that little short time frame. After school, it's supposed to be that time where hopefully you're reinforcing that in a fun, creative way. And you know, and the thing is, you have to listen to your students, listen to your participants, observe them, see what turns them on, and use that to your benefit and engage students. And it's like, you know, if you love sports and stats, that's like a mathematical dream. It's like, what was the stats on the game last night? And they get all excited, like, they're calculating, they're using math skills, a math mindset. I'm not talking about doing math problems. I'm talking thinking mathematically, right? So you use what they're excited about as a tool to get them to learn. And the thing about it, you don't want it to be the extension of the school day. You just want to take some of those best practices, some of the core objectives, and then turn it into fun, engaging activities that students love.
Our next one is, and I'm going to flip who I want to speak on this because I feel like Dr. Odom is going to do a good job of this one. Correlating clubs, enrichment activities, STEM to the test scores.
So I don't think I'll do
And your activities.
I don't think I'll do a better job than the others, but I do have some examples of clubs that are just awesome. And I love to see, I mean, so excited. And to piggyback on the last one, just because we show up, don't feel like you have to put your kids in a structured environment to show us how good you make your kids behave, okay? Because when I get there, I want to see them engaged. I want to see them show me some stuff. I've seen some wonderful things outside under a tree, you know, with a drama. I've seen them, I love the archery. I love to learn how to do, like one place, I was learning Kung Fu moves, you know, so karate or whatever it was. So I was like, yes, I'm going to use that. Maybe on my husband next time. But you want to make sure, though, that as you're having these fun ideas, you're constantly reminding them why they're learning it and how that it will show up again. You want to, you know, one of the things, and I think Dr. Briggs mentioned it earlier, it may have been Dr. Phil, you know, I keep looking to see which one's talking. But here's the thing. If you don't connect it back to the academics, they're going to miss it. Y'all, I showed up in physics at the University of South Alabama, and I had the coolest. Dr. Varghese was so cool. He was on my doctoral committee. I loved him. He showed us the coolest stuff. And that's where it ended for me most days. You know, so if we just show kids cool stuff and we don't make that connection back to where they're going to see it again, and you don't show it to them how it might look on a test or how they may have to replicate that, you're missing an opportunity. So as you're having these fun activities, like Dr. Briggs mentioned with STEM, connect it back to the academics for them. If you don't make the connection for them, it probably won't be made. It can be done in one question. 5 questions, not 50. Don't drill it, don't kill it. 1 or 2 questions to tie it back in to what they're learning in the regular class. It can make such a powerful difference. And I thank Dr. Varghese every day for doing that for me in physics. Do that for your kids.
Okay, thank you. So the next one is data from Easy Report, and Dr. Briggs is going to talk about that.
Data. That's kind of sexy when you say it, right? Data.
The numbers person.
So with most of the data that goes into the reports that we write, it's mostly descriptive. And everyone understands what descriptive data is. Basically, it just paints a picture. We had 20% African American students. We had 30% Asian students. It's just telling you what you have. It doesn't really necessarily express impact. Just because you had X amount of students in your program that attended more than 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, and they happened to get good grades, doesn't mean it was because of your program. So most of the reports, we're not talking about impact because that's a whole different type of analysis. And we don't really do any real analysis when it comes to the reports. The closest I've gotten to doing a real analysis was a correlational analysis that I did with attendance and standardized test scores to see if there's a relationship between the number of days and their attendance they went into the program and higher scores. And that was actually a correlational analysis. We're R value, right? But we don't, it's not that deep. We don't do that. So the question is, it goes back to what type of data are we looking for and what type of data is important to me? Let me just throw a couple out here and to get y'all going. Parent involvement data. Somebody tell me, give me 2 examples of parent involvement data. A parent showing up. Usually it's about a parent showing up to something. Out of 100% of parents, what's the percentage of parents that show up to your events? And y'all can shout it out real quick.
10.
1%? 60? 60? 60? Where are you at? What are you giving away for free? She doing something. I need to find out what you're doing. But the Okay, y'all gotta talk to her. But parent involvement, right? Is like essential professional development data. So one thing about easy reports, they ask you to report the categories, right? You got session names, activity category, and I think there's another category. Usually, all the objectives that you're trying to achieve with this one activity, you could list it under objectives and connect the objectives to it, but in the category part where we pull data from, it just says one thing, like STEM. But this was also a parental involvement activity as well. But this was also a literacy activity as well. This was also this activity as well. How do you share that information? And this is probably gonna be a challenge for Truman Pierce working with different sites. How do you capture all of that in a very substantive kind of way to share with your evaluator? Because when we pull the reports and we see where it says one parent or it doesn't even say parent, one adult showed up to an event in a year, we're like, what am I gonna write for parent involvement? And that looks bad. Even though you did all these virtual programs where students were home cooking, they had to have a parent there, right? They're home virtually doing other activities. Parents were there. That's parent involvement. Service learning is another one. Service learning, they did a virtual postcard to senior citizens via Zoom or Flipgrid or something. That's service learning. That's community service. You have to find, because y'all are doing it, but are you documenting and characterizing it properly is the key. And, I'll go back to the remarks I said earlier. Y'all are doing the heavy lifting and doing the hard work. Now all you have to do is make sure you're organizing your data, properly labeling your data, and sharing and communicating the data, which is a challenge when you have a small staff. So I would encourage you, find somebody that you work with that's part of your team who's a geek like me when it comes to data and labeling things and doing kind of stuff, and let that person do it. They'll have fun doing it, and they'll do like I did with Erica. Erica, do you see this report? Did you see this? And she's like, yeah, whatever. So find that person that you work with that gets excited about data, organizing things, and let them do it. And you keep doing what you do. You go have fun with the kids. So those are my remarks. Thank you, Erica, for the opportunity.
So our next one is parental involvement, and we'll start with Dr. Odom.
Well, Dr. Briggs has already said a lot, so I'm going to be really quickly with this one. Parental involvement. You know, parents need so much help and support for what they can do to help their children make better grades. Think about what parents need. Think about what they want. I love some of the structure that I've seen with webinars that were provided to parents. Get them involved in their lives. Let them know that you care. Build a relationship with your parents. Let them feel like, oh, I've got to go see what they're doing at 21st Century because they always make me feel good when I go there. So build relationships with them. Offer them virtual training if they can't come. And I have a little guide here that I bought. I pulled off Google. One of the things that I love that's sitting here is offer daycare for them while they come to meet with you. Have someone to take care of their little ones so they can enjoy their time looking at all of the projects. Think of the little things that will make their lives easier as they make their time to come to you. Parents work very hard, so let's make it enjoyable. Have them refreshments. Have them feel welcome. Show them what their kids are doing. And then if they can't get there, offer them virtual tours through what their children have done. Have them sign in virtually so that you have a record of that, so that you can put it in easy reports. We've made contact. We gave them an hour of training. We all do virtual training. Why can't parents? So that's all I'm going to say on that.
Look at parenting. It doesn't always have to be on your school campus. There's other ways to do parenting. Some sites, your kids ride home on a bus, and they're not even on the school campus, and parents are too tired to come back or doesn't have time. In one county, Franklin, I'm just going to call it out, the extension agent makes parenting packages for the site, and during the pandemic, she mailed them to the homes of the parents, and then parents could get on their phone and send in that they got the activity or whatever, or they read it. During the school year, they will hand it out to the kids as the parents sign them out. Also, if your kids, you don't, like I said, have to have it on school campus, look at going someplace else, like to their community and do a parenting event. If it's a community that you're afraid to go into, get the police department to go and do an event, or the fire department to do something there. Parents are busy, and more than ever now, you need to go to your parents. And something somebody told us a long time ago, never tell them you want them to come for parenting classes, because that's a big red flag. I think you're a bad parent. You need to come to a parenting class. Instead, invite them to activity and they told us this, but fun on whatever you say. Everybody wants to have fun.
That's a great idea. So our last topic is service learning, and Dr. Hammonds.
Service learning has been very hard, hasn't it, the last couple of years, of how to put it together and offer it. But service learning is such an important component of what we do in after-school programs. And a couple of examples I've seen, not just this past year, and again, we've been all over the place, that some schools were able to operate pretty much in-house the whole year. Some did a blended model. Some weren't able to open when they thought they might be. So we've been all over the place due to the impact of COVID. And again, hopefully things are becoming stable. But you don't have to go across the world to think of some project or into another part of our state to plan a service learning project. It may literally be across the street from you. And I say that because one school system I work with, there is literally across the street from this campus, there's a senior citizens home. And those senior citizens, now COVID made them pivot and have to do things a little bit differently, but they basically adopted that senior citizens home where students would go over and do activities, STEM related, like how to make an airplane and fly it, which was a fun activity for the older citizens there, fun activity for the children. And when the nursing home said we cannot allow any visitors in, then they found a virtual way of doing that and reaching out to another partner that had another clientele that would be served very well by this relationship with the school and children learning those 5 components of service learning and really brightening the lives of some people. I see another school system here. They partner with their city's library, and there are parts of the community that may be hard to get from a house to the library downtown. So their project has been to build a portable library, which you see in many communities, where books are stacked in, and it's an honor system, and I can go and check out a book and take it home and read and hopefully return it. Then it's mobile, so they move it to another place. Those children built that portable library. They worked with the library in terms of where we might want to get it out and how we want to do it. So there again, a couple of blocks away from their then central office was a partner ready, willing, and able to say, we can make service learning work with you. And then a third example, a community where tourists come by the thousands every year, and litter's a problem everywhere, but litter was a particular problem there. So they said, let's do something about littering and recycling. So starting at their school with litter bins set out, and they take a tonnage amount every few months. They can record that. They try to partner with agencies throughout the community, again, to focus on, don't drop it, put it in a garbage can, or if it's recyclable, do that. So I guess what I'm saying is we can envision service learning being so much greater than it has to be, but when you go and drill down to the community level, it is huge what the impact can be upon that community, upon those students learning about service above self, and what those components of service learning can really help me as a student now, but also they're not even thinking about 10, 20 years from now, but they'll go back and think about it. Here's what I learned that service learning and working with my community can do. So look across the street, look down the block, look at some service group, Rotary, Lions Club, whatever it may be, the Chamber of Commerce. What's an identified need within our area, and let's tailor our service learning activities to meeting a specific need that may not be but a block away from us. Creativity, looking at ways that outside that box of how to do a service learning project, and perhaps not be stuck in that box where year after year I do the same service learning project. Look out there and be creative, because it's a huge landscape where everybody can need a helping hand. So you all are very creative when it comes to service learning, and hopefully that part of our programs will really be back in force this year as we get back to more normal times.
All right, so we're out of time. Does anybody have any questions that are just, no? Okay, great.
I just want to say I have the best CLCs ever.
So thank you for our panelists. We appreciate y'all taking the
No,
time
you
to
don't.
come.
I do.
So we're transitioning, and I'm still gonna be up here talking. So everybody stand up, because I know we're throwing a lot of like talking to y'all, and you know, we're after lunch. We had good sandwiches and salads. It wasn't super heavy, but still we might have had a little bit too much bread pudding. So let's just stand up and stretch a little bit while we transition our external evaluators out, and my Linda's up with me. Thank y'all.
Congratulations again. You're always so well prepared. Dr. Riggs did a great job too.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Thank you, Susan. Good job.
I always need to like be close to you to be like, okay, time it out.
But you know what? You need somebody like.
I was trying to do eye contact with your wife, for her to do it.
It's good.
And I'm like, I need to get them up for a second, because I know we're. Oh, I need to stretch. How do y'all want to do the seats?
Okay, now how do you see the, oh, you have to bring your phone, oh, there's a computer, I see it.
So do y'all just want to get up every time, like for your portion, you stand up, because that's the only way you're going to see the PowerPoints.
So what we could do is, get it out here. You know it ain't gonna be good.
Nope.
Well, somebody gonna have to stand here and look at this.
That's what I'm saying. While you talk, but